I've had enough of your incompetence. You are finished here. Now get out!
The crystal glass shattered against the floor, and the sound spread through the silent dining room like a gunshot. Everyone turned to look at her. Claire Bennett stood frozen in place, holding the empty tray, her face burning with shame, while the manager gripped her wrist with far too much force for it to be merely an accident. "Do you think you can contradict me?" he hissed between his teeth, still smiling at the customers as if nothing were happening. The Bellagio Prime was famous for its elegance: golden chandeliers, live piano music, politicians, and businessmen seated at the most expensive tables in the city. Here, waiters had no opinions of their own, they simply served. But Claire had seen something she could not ignore. A few minutes earlier, she had delivered the bill to table number 8 for the federal judge known for his hard line against corruption. The total was nearly $500 higher than the actual consumption. She knew the figures because she always checked them twice. When she returned to the system, she saw the changes recorded under the name of the manager, Robert Vance. She had thought about ignoring it, pretending it was not her concern. She needed the job to pay for her mother's physical therapy sessions. Her mother had lost mobility after a stroke. But then she remembered the phrase her mother used to repeat before the illness: "Honesty is not up for discussion." Claire went back to Robert. The bill for table 18 was modified. "It is wrong." He did not even blink. "It is fine, and no, they did not order the reserve wine or the premium dessert." Robert tilted his head, looking at her as if she were a defective object. "You are new here. You still do not understand how things work. I understand that this is theft." That was when he grabbed her by the wrist. Now, in the middle of the dining room, in front of the customers who were watching discreetly, he squeezed harder and harder. "You do not know who you are dealing with," he murmured. "We are going to talk in the storeroom." He began dragging her toward the hallway without cameras, behind the wine cellar. Claire tried to plant her feet on the polished marble, but her shoes slipped. The pianist kept playing. No one intervened. Until a low, controlled voice cut through the air. "Let her go." It was not loud. It was not a shout. But the entire restaurant froze. Robert released Claire's wrist as if it had burned him. She turned and saw the man at that table, dark suit impeccable, silver at the temples, posture straight as a blade. He was no ordinary customer. The silence around him said everything. "Mr. Montgomery," Robert swallowed. "This is just a misunderstanding with an employee." "I heard it," the man replied, "and I saw it." He rose with calm precision. Every step seemed calculated. Claire felt something strange, not fear, but the sense that the balance of power in the room had shifted. The bill for table 18 was modified at 9:47 in the evening. The man continued. "The reserve wine and the premium dessert were added. Correct, Robert?" Robert paled. "Sir, the question was simple." Claire noticed the discreet cameras in the ceiling. They had always been there, yet curiously they never pointed toward the hallway behind the wine cellar. It was an administrative error. Robert tried to regain control. "Robert." The man turned to Claire. "Your name?" "Claire Bennett." He nodded slowly. "For today, you are free, Claire. Go home." She opened her mouth to explain, but 2 men in suits appeared discreetly near the bar, the security, not the restaurants. She tried to smile. "Mr. Montgomery, we do not need to involve." Robert was interrupted with dangerous ease. "The Bellagio Prime belongs to me." The silence grew heavy as concrete. "I do not tolerate thieves under my roof." Claire felt, for a second, that the air had left her lungs. Montgomery, a man who appeared in the newspapers only in whispers, entrepreneur, investor, strategist. Some said his influence reached beyond boardrooms into territories few could see. Robert began to sweat. "Can I explain?" "You will explain everything," said Montgomery, making an almost imperceptible gesture to the guards. In the office, when they took Robert away, Montgomery turned his gaze back to Claire. She knew she could lose her job. She breathed deeply. "I knew it, and I still said it." He looked at her as if evaluating a rare piece. "Interesting." Claire left the restaurant 10 minutes later, still trembling. She did not notice the black car parked across the street. She did not see the person inside make a call. She went home alone. In the top-floor office, Montgomery reviewed the recordings of the dining room. "Rewind," he ordered. On the screen appeared Claire confronting Robert for the first time, away from the public. Her nervousness was evident, but her voice remained firm. She did not know I was in the private room, noted his advisor, Henry Sinclair, arms crossed. Do you think she is sincere? Montgomery paused the video at the exact moment Claire said, I understand that this is theft. Either very brave, or very naive, or very dangerous, added Henry. Montgomery did not reply. Instead he said, I want to know everything: address, history, family, debts. Find out if someone sent her. Henry raised an eyebrow. Do you think she could be a piece in someone else's game against you? I do not believe in coincidences. That same night, Claire arrived at the small apartment in the east part of the city. Her mother was in the adapted recliner with the television at low volume. Claire knelt beside her and took her hand. I think I was fired today, she whispered. Her mother could not answer, but her eyes moistened slightly. Claire's phone vibrated. Unknown number. Present yourself tomorrow at 2 o'clock in the afternoon at the Bellagio Prime to resolve administrative matters. Henry closed his eyes. There was the end of the road. She did not suspect that the message was only the beginning of something much larger. She barely slept. At 6 o'clock in the morning, Claire was already sitting at the tiny kitchen table, staring at a cup of cold coffee. Beside the phone lay the medical bills for her mother, physical therapy at home, imported medicines, adult diapers. The total was a constant reminder that courage does not pay the bills. At 1:40 in the afternoon, she stood in front of the Bellagio Prime. By day, the restaurant looked less imposing, without the golden lights and live piano, only concrete, glass, and silence. The guard at the door recognized her. Mr. Sinclair is expecting you. They did not take her to the main dining room. They rode the service elevator to the top floor, where Claire had never been. The office was spacious, with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the entire city, books arranged by color, modern art on the walls, absolute silence. Henry Sinclair stood beside the desk. Miss Bennet, he said formally. Please sit. She obeyed. Mr. Montgomery entered a few seconds later, adjusting the watch on his wrist. In daylight he looked even more imposing. Did you sleep well? He asked. More or less, I suppose, she answered, disconcerted. He sat across from her and opened a thin folder. You have worked here for 4 months. Before that, 2 temporary jobs. You studied accounting for 2 years and left after your mother's stroke. Her stomach tightened. Does all this matter? Everything matters. Henry placed a tablet on the table. On it were frames from the recording of the previous night. Did you know they were recording? Asked Montgomery. No. And still I confronted the manager. Yes. He tilted his head slightly. You understand that what Robert was doing was not only dishonest, it was part of something bigger. Claire frowned. Bigger? In what sense? Henry touched the screen and opened a financial report from the last 8 months. More than $2 million had been diverted through small changes in the bills, sums that influential customers rarely questioned. Claire felt her heart beat faster. $2 million. And it was not only Robert. Montgomery interlaced his fingers on the desk. He was obeying someone. The silence stretched. I only saw what was in front of my eyes, said Claire. I did not know it was on that scale, but I suspected it. She hesitated. Yes. Montgomery stood and walked to the window. The person financing this is called Albert Baxter, a real estate investor and an old rival. Henry added that he had used the Bellagio Prime to create a history of violations, intending to report the restaurant for tax fraud, obtain the suspension of its license, and then buy the building at a reduced price. Claire absorbed every word. So Robert was a pawn. Yes, answered Montgomery. He looked at her again. You destabilized the plan ahead of time. She felt the weight of the information settle on her shoulders. I just did not want to cheat a customer. Sometimes, said Montgomery calmly, a moral decision unleashes a corporate war. Claire breathed deeply. Then why am I here? Henry exchanged a quick glance with Montgomery. Because we need to know whether you are simply an honest waitress or whether someone sent you. The question hung in the air. Claire felt a sting of indignation. Are you saying I am a spy? I am saying coincidences do not exist, replied Montgomery. She stood slowly. If you believe I am involved, you can call the police. Henry observed her reaction attentively. Montgomery remained motionless. "Sit down." The authority in his voice was not aggressive, but absolute. Claire sat again. "We have already verified you," he continued. "Real medical debts, clean record, no connections to Baxter or his men." He closed the folder. "You are exactly what you appear to be. Is that good or bad?" asked Claire. For the first time a slight smile appeared on his face. "It depends on the point of view." Henry approached a side panel and turned on another video. In the images, Robert was meeting secretly with a man in a light suit in an underground parking garage. "Baxter," explained Henry. "Robert still believes he is safe," added Montgomery. "I told him what happened was only a misunderstanding and that you would be fired." Her eyes widened like saucers. "But I was not fired." "No." She felt a mixture of relief and tension. "What is the plan?" Montgomery approached the desk. "We want you to return to work tonight as if nothing had happened." "Why?" "So Robert will panic," added Henry. "Insecure people make mistakes when they feel exposed." Claire remained silent. "This is dangerous." "Yes," replied Montgomery without hesitation. She thought of her mother, of the bills. "If I refuse?" Montgomery tilted his head. "You will receive salary for 3 months and an impeccable letter of recommendation. You can look for another job. Robert will continue acting until we find another way to expose him." The silence settled in the office. Claire felt something strengthening inside her. "If I do it, I need guarantees." Henry raised his eyebrows. "Which ones?" "That my mother will be safe, that nothing will come near her, and that when everything ends the truth will come to light. I do not want secret agreements." Montgomery studied her for several long seconds. "Accepted." He extended his hand. Claire hesitated only an instant before shaking it. His grip was firm but not crushing. "Thus," said Montgomery, "begins the fall of Albert Baxter." That night Claire entered the Bellagio Prime with the same tray in her hands. The other waiters looked at her with surprise. "You came back," whispered a colleague. "I came back." Robert came out of the kitchen with a tablet of orders in his hand. When he saw her he paled. "What are you doing here?" Claire kept her posture straight. "Mister." Montgomery said it was a misunderstanding. His jaw tightened. "We have to talk." "Perhaps we should talk here," she answered calmly. He swallowed. On the other side of the room Montgomery observed from table 3. The pieces were moving, and the game had only just begun. The dining room was full that Friday night. The chandelier shone. The piano sounded softly. The politicians smiled. The businessmen raised glasses to agreements. Everything seemed normal. But beneath the surface the tension could be felt. Claire felt Robert's gaze on every movement. He did not shout, he did not touch her, but he watched like someone who knows something has slipped out of control. In the corner of the room Montgomery conversed with 2 men who pretended to be customers. They were not. Claire recognized the attentive look, the alert posture, the security earpiece behind the ear. A low voice sounded in the earpiece. "He is here." 3 calls since his arrival, all to the same number. Claire maintained her smile while she served a glass of wine. Understood. At 8:37 in the evening Robert took Marcus, the head of the cellar, to the wine cellar area. "The camera in the cellar is active," murmured Henry. Claire passed slowly near the kitchen door, pretending to take a pitcher of water. On the office screen Montgomery watched the live transmission. "He is nervous," he noted. In the cellar Robert spoke in a low voice, but the recording was clear. "He knows something." "Then destroy the recordings," answered Marcus. "I cannot delete everything now, it would raise suspicions. Baxter wants results by Monday or deliver something against Montgomery or he will cut you off." Montgomery remained motionless in front of the screen. "Do we have enough?" "Not yet," said Henry. "We need him to mention the money." Claire felt a shiver. She returned to the tables, but Robert intercepted her in the hallway. "Do you think you have one?" he hissed. She did not back down. "I am not playing at anything." "Of course you are." "You do not know who. I know enough." He came too close. "If you open your mouth to anyone, your life will become hell." Claire held his gaze. "It already became hell once. I survived." Robert took a step back, surprised. At 9:12 his phone vibrated. He went outside to answer in the side parking lot. Exterior camera active, warned Henry. On the monitor, Robert spoke on speakerphone. I need more time. The voice on the other side was cold. You had 8 months. Montgomery suspects something. Then deliver the material you have on Monday. The report goes to the City Hall. The suspension comes out on Wednesday. After that, the building goes to auction. Montgomery tilted his head slightly. He will deliver something false, he murmured. Yes, confirmed Henry. And we will change it before. Claire did not know the complete plan, but she felt that something enormous was about to explode. At 10:05, Robert returned to the dining room, pale. He went straight to the administrative office. He is accessing the server, said Henry. Victor, the technology specialist, was already typing rapidly. He is copying files onto a USB drive. Montgomery pronounced with calm, let him. Henry looked at him. Let him. Yes. But substitute with the prepared package. Victor executed the order in seconds. The real files were redirected, and what Robert was now copying was a carefully prepared set, clean transactions, legal contracts, nothing that would compromise Montgomery. Robert left the office 10 minutes later with the USB in his pocket. At 11:20, the shift ended. Claire was taking off her apron when Henry appeared at the door of the changing room. Mr. Montgomery wants to see you. She went up again to the top floor. The office was lit only by the screens. Tomorrow, said Montgomery without preamble, Robert will meet Baxter at the Solaris building and the press will be there. Claire frowned. The press? Henry explained. We sent an anonymous package, recordings from the cellar, the parking garage, and reports of the diversions. Investigative journalists have been following Baxter for months. They needed a spark. Claire felt her heart beat faster. So they are going to bring everything to light? Yes, confirmed Montgomery. She breathed deeply. Robert had chosen his side. On Saturday at 6:45 in the evening, 3 film crews were discreetly positioned near the Solaris building. Inside a black car parked 100 meters away, Claire watched the monitor. You did not have to come, said Henry. I need to see it. At 7:03, Robert entered the building. At 7:07, Baxter appeared in the lobby. The meeting was brief. The USB was delivered. An envelope with money passed from hand to hand. Wait, said Montgomery. On the internal monitor of the building, Baxter connected the USB to his laptop. His face changed slowly. This is garbage, he murmured. Robert paled. It cannot be. I brought you bills and payrolls. Before the argument escalated, the office door burst open. Mr. Baxter, can you comment on the accusations of fraud and sabotage? The cameras swarmed in. Robert froze. Baxter tried to close the laptop, but the flashes already lit the room. We have recordings in which he financed fund diversions at the Bellagio Prime, continued the journalist. Robert tried to flee. Outside, the police were waiting. Henry smiled slightly. Synchronized with the complaint filed this morning. Claire watched everything with trembling hands. This is really happening. In the lobby, Baxter shouted that it was a trap, but the transmission was already live. In minutes, the news exploded on social media. Investor exposed in corporate sabotage scheme. Manager implicated in million-dollar diversions, arrested in the act. They handcuffed Robert on the spot. He searched for someone with his eyes, and for a second, through the glass door, he saw Claire in the car. His gaze was no longer arrogant, it was empty. The car pulled away slowly. Claire exhaled the air she seemed to have held for months. Is it over? She asked. Montgomery, watching the police car lights reflect on the buildings, answered, no. Now the restoration begins. She looked at him. And me. He held her gaze calmly. You chose not to be an accomplice. That changes everything. The city continued its usual movement, but that night 2 men who believed they controlled the rules discovered that the truth, when it comes to light, can be more destructive than any threat. Claire leaned her head against the seat. For the first time since her mother's stroke, she felt something different from fear. She felt strength. And the Bellagio Prime would never be the same. Neither would she. On Sunday morning, the name of Albert Baxter was on every news portal. Businessman arrested for attempted sabotage and corporate fraud. $1 million scheme involving elite restaurant dismantled. Employee could be key figure in the fall of the group. Claire turned off the phone. She did not want to see her blurred face in the reports or read comments from strangers. Not in her real life. In the living room, her mother watched the television in silence. When Claire approached, she squeezed her hand with unexpected strength. Her eyes said everything. Pride. At 10 o'clock in the morning, Henry came to pick her up. The Bellagio Prime was surrounded by curious onlookers and journalists, but unlike the previous week, the atmosphere was not suspicious, it was supportive. Former employees waited inside. When Claire entered, applause erupted. She almost stepped back. She did not like being the center of attention. Montgomery came down the mezzanine staircase with the same proud posture as always. "We need to talk," he said in a calm tone. In the office, the city looked different. The view from above was clearer, more open. "Formal charges have been filed against him," reported Henry. "Conspiracy, tax fraud, active corruption." The prosecutor's office accepted the recordings as evidence. "And Robert?" asked Claire. "Plea agreement with justice," answered Montgomery. "Calculated time in exchange for complete testimony." She nodded slowly. She felt no resentment, she felt closure. Montgomery approached the desk and placed an envelope in front of her. "What is this?" "An offer." Claire opened the contract. Director of Operations, Profit Participation, Ethical Restructuring Plan. She looked up. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely." Henry added, "You know the dining room better than any manager. You know where the system failed." Claire breathed deeply. "I am only a waitress." Montgomery came closer. "You are the person who chose honesty when it was easier to stay silent. That is leadership." Silence. "If I accept," she said, "I do not want superficial changes. I want real changes." "You will have them," replied Montgomery without hesitation. That week the Bellagio Prime closed for 3 days. Complete audit, contract review, mandatory training, new financial transparency policy. Claire supervised everything with an attentive eye. She felt the weight of responsibility, but also something new. Belonging. The following Friday, the restaurant reopened. There were lines at the door, curious customers, discreet reporters. Montgomery gave a brief statement. "The Bellagio Prime will continue to exist not because it is perfect, but because we decided to correct what was wrong." Claire was at his side, not behind him, at his side. During service, a customer called her. "Are you the employee who exposed the scheme?" She hesitated. "I was only doing my job." The man smiled. "And it is worth being proud of that." That night, closing the register, Claire found a note under the tray. "Honesty is rare, do not lose it." And she smiled. Later in the office, Montgomery observed the dining room through the now transparent glass, without hidden mirrors. "Before I watched from here, remaining invisible," he said. "And now?" asked Claire. "Now I prefer to be in plain sight." She understood. Strength was not in invisible control, but in assuming responsibility. Weeks passed. Her mother's physical therapy expanded thanks to the new salary. Claire resumed her studies on the night shift. The Bellagio Prime became a model of ethical practices in the industry. Businessmen contacted Montgomery wanting to know the secret. He always answered, "Start by listening to those who work in the dining room." One night after closing, Claire stayed alone in the dining room. Chandeliers off, tables set, welcoming silence. She walked toward the old wine cellar room. She remembered the hand squeezing her wrist, the fear, the doubts, and she realized how much she had grown. Montgomery appeared behind her. "Thinking about the past? About how it could have been different if you had stayed silent?" She nodded. He crossed his arms. "Empires fall for 2 reasons. Arrogance or accumulated lies. You prevented the second." She looked him in the eyes. "And you allowed the truth to come out." A slight smile appeared on his face. "Perhaps I also needed to learn something." Henry's phone rang on the upper floor. Montgomery looked at Claire. "The work never ends." "And thank God," she replied. Outside the doors the city continued. Cars, lights, agreements. But inside the Bellagio Prime something had changed forever. It was no longer only a luxurious restaurant. It was proof that personal courage can change entire structures. Claire turned off the last light before leaving. She cast one more glance at the empty dining room. She no longer saw fear there, she saw creation. And she knew that from now on she would always choose the same side, the